everyone, and welcome to the start of a new type of direction I'm going to be going for a few episodes. And it's going to be Wings of Fire content. I've had some requests to talk about this sooner than I anticipated, so I'm going to get started. I've also been working my way through the books again, second time around. I've actually read the first book 3 times, but I'm going to be I'm rereading the whole series again. So I will be doing a character corner for each of the main characters. I don't know what I'll do for the legends. I don't know if I'll break those into separate character corners or if I'll end up just talking about it all in a fireside chat type of longer segment or not. But either way, today I'm going to start with Clay because I've read that book 3 times and I definitely think I think that's an awesome book. I do want to start, though, with praise for this series. If you haven't read it yet, do. It's an amazing book series. I don't think I've actually read a book series where I felt this inspired on a level that is the way Wings of Fire is. I would say Warrior Cats is very inspiring in that a lot of people have things like role plays I've seen or OCs, that kind of thing. I mean, I have my fair share of Warriors OCs too. But Wings of Fire has such a unique quality to it that I'll probably talk later in more detail about in another video, because I could go into it in a lot of detail. But Tui T. Sutherland has just done such a fantastic job of making not just the like I just love good character interaction and character development and characters. Like, I can be sold on something just on that, but she also is so good at foreshadowing, consequences, and plot. I think it's wonderful. I only actually have one real riff with the book series at all, but I want to save that for another video so I can talk about it, and that's the only thing I have at all wrong with these books, in my opinion. But I think they're very inspiring tribe for artists, writers, everything. It's just, I would say reading these books has helped my character development and assessment so much. So if you're an aspiring writer or you just love a good book series, pick these up. I don't care if they're scholastic, whatever. They are just wonderful. It doesn't matter what kind of book they are. Go walk into the kids section, even if you're an adult, and pick them up. That's what I do. It doesn't matter. They're wonderful. Alright, so let's jump into the first book. Warning, there will be spoilers. I'm not even going to really give a spoiler-free type of any kind of thing here. Because I just want to talk about it and how good it is. So, just so you know, if you haven't read the first book, spoiler warning, just go read the book, and it's wonderful. Trust me. Anyone who loves dragons especially will love it. Alright, so let's start with Clay. Clay the Mudwing. Which I actually kind of think was a funny choice for the first character, but it ended up being an ingenious choice. It was wonderful. Tui starts out this book series expertly, because the whole of Pyria, and I gotta talk a little bit about Pyria to begin with, because the first book doesn't just set up Clay as a character, it also sets up this universe. Really this whole planet, I want to say. As we work through the series, it's kind of like you're learning and living on this planet of dragons, and dragons run the world. And it's just so awesome. It's wonderful. I love it. And it doesn't feel far-fetched. It feels very real. It feels just so natural. Like, it flows so well. Like, there's nothing crazy about the world. It runs just like a planet Earth you would expect. Really. Except dragons rule it, and there's 3 moons in the sky. That's about the only real differences. I mean, some of the things, like where the desert's located and where the swamp is located, like, some of those things might be a little close together, but they're not unreasonable, especially for dragons that can fly pretty far. But I love that you are introduced to this world so good because you're introduced to it under a mountain. Really, it starts out with a prologue, of course, with I think it's pronounced Havichur. Havichur? I don't know. He's an Icewing. I can't pronounce that name. Good thing he's only in the prologue and then he dies. Still want to. I would love a winglet on him though. I'd love a winglet on like the 2 dead guardians that don't make it. But yeah. Anyway. And that's the reason I think this is wonderful is, like I've said before in past videos, that a real expert tool of writing is when you're going to throw a reader into a new universe with rules that are just, well, a little different. Like, even though this is essentially the world behaves like Earth, you still don't understand dragons, what they can do, what their culture is. And, you open up the book and there's a whole continent with all these different places, and there's like 7 tribes of dragons, and you're like, oh my, it's like a lot to take in. So it's really good that we start out under a mountain with a limited amount of dragons that know each other, but you start out with Clay. And I mean this with all due affection, because Clay is actually a real sweetie. He's still one of my favorite POVs. I mean, I read that book 3 times, I'm not kidding. And I enjoyed it each time I read it. I didn't even, like, slog through it ever. It was wonderful. But he's a little stupid. He's not the brightest torch in the cave, but he's a real sweetheart. But because he's not too bright and he's a little bit not as quick on taking in information or remembering information, which is key there. Like, he's learned all the history of Pyria. He should know this, but he doesn't remember it. So you kind of get to learn it with him. And you get a really fast introduction to it at the beginning, with him in the cave with the Dragonette. So he was just a perfect choice to start with. Because, if you start with Glory or with Starflight or, or even Sunny, I guess, I would say that they're the smart ones. Tsunami is smart for sure, but she's also just perceptive, not necessarily memorizing intelligent. But Clay is neither. He's not perceptive and he's not that smart either. But he is caring, so he has a really deep connection and assessment of the dragons he's with. And so it's kind of like you form this instant, aw, he's a sweetheart. He's not very bright, but he's a sweetheart. And you automatically know how he feels and interacts with his... I'm just going to call them his siblings. They're his adopted siblings. Even though they're different dragons, but different dragon tribes. But the way he interacts with each one really sets up how you're gonna know to behave, like how you're gonna know to appreciate each tribe in and of itself too, and how he's gonna interact with them. For example, like, he looks at Glory with quite a bit of awe, and he worries about her. And you can kind of tell, like at first I was like, is he crushing? But then I realized he just doesn't always know quite what to make of Glory, but he's going to protect her. And he's not really going to listen to her when she just gets stubborn. Starflight he treats like his brother for sure. He's just like, yeah, sure, I'll get him his scroll. Here he is. What's up? Like, he treats him like a big brother, and that's sweet. Sunny is the cute one. He's playful with her. He's very gentle. And then Tsunami is just kind of almost like his equal. Like, he listens to her a lot, lets her boss him around, but he can be a bit, more like himself, I want to say, with. He is still himself with all of them, but I would say I love their dynamic the best. And I love that it's not romantic. It's just so wonderful. It's perfect. It's just a nice sibling bond with no romance. Perfect. I love it. That's my favorite kind of interaction. If only that happened more in Wings of Fire. But yeah, I love that. But starting out on the mountain is great because, and it's nice too, because even though there's not an Icewing in their underground, like each of the Dragonettes are a different tribe, from the prophecy, it's each dragon from a different tribe, except for Skywings and Icewings. Except for Rain Wings and Ice Wings, but they replaced the Sky Wing with the Rain Wing. So, yeah, that's the 5 Dragonettes. Morrissey wasn't happy about that, but that means that you understand, you're learning about 5 of the tribes very directly. You know, you're in Clay's head, so you see how he works things through and what his personality is like, and then you get very up close with how a Nightwing thinks, how a quote-unquote Sandwing thinks, and how a Sea Wing and a Rain Wing think. And then one of their guardians is a Sky Wing. And, Grumpy. Grumpy Sky Wing. Also would love a winglet on her. But then, having Havichur in the prologue is also a nice way to tie in, so you've gotten at least some, like, that was a brilliant move, because even though now, like being in the second series, I'm like, why was Havichur even in the Talons of Peace? Because it sounded very odd that even one would be in the Talons of Peace, and I'm like, huh, that is weird. How did he get there? And I'd love to know his story. But it was a genius move on Tui's part to make you immediately familiar with all the tribes. Because, like, even though Gloria was a mistake in the prophecy, now you've been introduced to every tribe. And it adds tension, her not being in the prophecy, because, you know, immediately this prophecy set up to fail, and your brain's just going, what in the world? How are they going to pull this off? This'll be interesting. You know, because it's one of those things in a story, you expect things to fall into place, like, especially as the story goes on. Immediately, like when there's a prophecy. Like in Warrior Cats, for example. If you read that, when there's a prophecy, you expect everything to start falling into place right from the minute the story begins. But in this instance, the story starts out and it's immediately the complete opposite. The prophecies fail by the time you finish the prologue. And that's so cool. Because it immediately sets up, like, how are they going to pull that off? Which is such a nice tool to create kind of like a background tension, I think, of, well, it can't really succeed. And that leads to a lot of wonderful revelations later on. So anyway, I love the setup. So you're introduced right away, right at the beginning, to all the tribes. You know, you don't have to wait till the arena later to find an Ice Wing, though you learn more about them there. But you know, right away you're introduced. Clay is not very bright. He grew up under a mountain. He's perceptive, but he's also a little bit naive in a way that makes him just a little bit oblivious to how dragons think. So all of that, wonderful. I love it. And that's wonderful setup. Just genius moves on her part. It's like, take notes, story writers. That's really good. And then it makes the whole rest of the story flow. So, you know, when they escape, they end up in Scarlet's arena. It's so neat, too, to see Tsunami and Clay, like, they're just so not used to how the world works. Like, Tsunami's ready to fight them all. She's not, you know, oblivious to danger, but at the same time, they don't seem to understand still how this world works. And you get a taste of that cruelty, how bad this world can go right off the bat by the arena. You know, which is also, it kind of seemed to me a little bit at first, I was like, really? It's gladiator fights in the dragon world? But it ended up being such a nice tool to explain how harsh the war is and how cruel the dragon world is, of, like, you know, you just have to fight it. And I do think that's a nice setup, because there's a lot of conflict in this world and you've got to be immediately introduced to it. In a similar way, I would say, to, like, Warrior Cat's first book opened up with a battle scene. I like that Tui did that in her books. Like, she opened up the book, you know, with a very harsh scene, and then right in the middle, our characters are thrown into a very life or death situation that sets up the rest of how this world acts sometimes. You know, not all the time, but sometimes, where it can go. And I think that was really good to get them right thrown into that so you can see it firsthand. Especially from dragons who have never experienced it before. You know, they'd never heard of this. They were like, an arena, and then they're like, oh, an arena. This isn't good. You know, it's very, very wonderful setup. There. But yeah. So, what else did I have here? Oh, I did have one last thing on the cave, too. I also loved right away, instead of just telling you, feeding you facts about the story of the war. I know this is going back one step from the arena, um, but instead of just spoon feeding the audience, which I would have listened to for sure, it was just so good. It's such a good move to take your main characters and have them interact in such a comical way out this history. So you're essentially killing like 3 birds with 1 stone. It's wonderful because you're setting up how the characters interact and their personalities. You're setting up the history of what happened. So your audience, like the audience reading it, knows immediately what happened and why we're here, why we're in the middle of this war. And it also, it's just so funny. It's also comical, so it sticks with you. And it's just wonderful. It covers all the things it sets out to do, like immediately. And I love that. So that's one other thing I wanted to praise, but I thought that was such a nice story writing tool, is to take it something you could spoon feed someone and say, what if it's them together doing it as a skit, and that's just perfect. It's just wonderful. And it doesn't come across as forced at all. It's just, it's the kids playing around while their teachers are in the other room thinking they're studying, and they're just play acting, and I love that. It just I love how their personalities are on full display. It's wonderful. Anyway, back to the arena, because now I want to talk about Peril. Because Peril is such a fascinating character. I can't wait to get to talking about her book sometime. I think she's one of the characters with some of the best character development later on. But I do love how Clay and Peril interact, because it's pretty obvious to the reader that Peril has a crush on Clay. I mean, that's pretty obvious, but I love that Clay's so oblivious. But yet he picks up right away that that Peril's mother is Kestrel, and I love that. It's just so funny. Like, figures, Clay. You pick up on that, but you can't pick up she has a crush on you. But yeah. And I also like to, you get to see how the palace works, and you're introduced to Peril's backstory as well, which is a nice setup early on, so then you can sympathize with her through the rest of the story, and then immediately when you get to her book, you don't have to go through any kind of understanding of where that came from. Because in the second arc, and I know I'm talking ahead, so there are spoilers, but Peril has a book there. And unlike Winter and Ghibli, you don't have to kind of go through background material with Peril, because you know it already. And that's a nice touch that I like. We're introduced to her early enough that it makes you care about her in a lot earlier before you ever get to her. So it feels genuine. And I find that interesting. And then, poor Clay slap in the face when he goes to the Mud Kingdom and discovers that their parents don't take care of them, and his mom doesn't care. And it's funny at the same time, that interaction, but at the same time it's so sad. And then he finds his siblings, which is also sweet. I would say that some of that was a tad bit of a letdown, maybe, but it some of the aspects of it happened so fast, I guess. And I think maybe if we got another Mudwing POV, I'd have different opinions on that. I was expecting more from Mudwing culture, which I don't feel like we understand much as a fandom as a whole. I don't see a lot of we don't seem to know much about them and how they work. And I do think it would be interesting to get a book. In the same way, I'm like, give me my average, everyday, lowest circle Icewing POV. At the same time, I'm really rooting for a Royal Mudwing POV, because I'd really love to know how they think up in their higher aristocratic circles. I'm just interested in how Mudwings work, because I felt like it moved pretty fast through that end. It was all good, don't get me wrong, and it was all great. And I do think it was interesting having, Clay questioning, is he a monster the whole time, which was a nice little touch to his character. And then it being, no, he's a protector, and he can embrace it. And, I think it's I don't know that if I like how it was compared to Peril, but I can see where Peril would grasp onto that and kind of, make it more than it was. So I really do like the direction that went. It's just because someone told you something once in your life doesn't mean is who you are. Could mean they just don't understand, and I do like how that paid off. I just wish it had spent more time maybe in the Mud Kingdom so we could have seen how they worked more. Just especially even the upper class Mudwings. I'd like to know more about that, how their royalty works, because I think that'd be interesting. But anyway, I think that wraps up most of my thoughts. I'd like to talk more about my opinions on the universe. It's honestly mostly praise, but on top of that, it's just so interesting because there's so much to take out of this as just story writing inspiration. Wolf in general, Wings of Fire, is just so inspirational. It's just wonderful, and I love how she can weave in so many just nice pieces together all at once in one book series, because that is so rare to find. It's such a great series. I love it. But anyway, I'll be back with more of this. Don't worry. I definitely would love to talk more about this, and I'm partway through the second series by now, so I can definitely talk more. I haven't been waiting. I've just been reading. So anyway, I will be back later on with more analysis from Wings of Fire and other content as well. Please remember to like and subscribe. I appreciate you guys subscribing, those who have. It's been really nice. Thank you guys. You can also follow me on Pinterest at Raptor Blue if you want to see my art and things like that on there. That's the only kind of social media I have outside of YouTube or things like that. So anyway, bye guys. Have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.